Hello everyone, my name is Craig Reese. This is my channel, Israel Chat Bible. Today's show we were going to get into Emmanuel, who people call Jesus, is the warning. He was given as a warning of the last days and who to look for and who to know is the Father in flesh. Now, he was killed. Again, he did not gather Israel. He did not judge anybody. He spoke stern words and spoke in parables, but he didn't judge, and he didn't bring his kingdom to fruition on the earth. So Emmanuel is the warning. He does tell you that I must go, so the Comforter must come. And then in this video, we're going to talk about the judgment of the tares, the goats, and the gathering of the wheat into the barn, or the gathering of Israel into the land. Adam, please come on.
Hello.
Hi guys, so this is Adam and Arthur. We are all the gathering of, again, this people called Israel. And now Israel is not a people that are tied to a certain bloodline. They are people that follow the laws and commandments. Again, he loves those who follow his laws and commandments. Now in this show, I'm going to read some verses. If you're not familiar with some of the verses, like the great reaping that comes at the end, there is this separation. And you hear words, I'm sure you've heard words like wheat and tares, sheep and goats. But again, it's the left and the right. Well, the left, which would be the wheat and the sheep, is Israel. And then on the right, I think I got this right, is the tares and the goats, which is the Gentiles, or the dark and the light, getting separated. I don't have right in front of me exactly what it is, but it's basically a separation. One is the wheat is stored in the barn, and the wheat and tares grow up together. The wheat is harvested and stored in the barn, and the tares are bound together and burned. So, we have a story that's being set for a judgment of the last days, and then everybody will say, well, that Jesus comes back and he gathers his people in rapture. Oh, go ahead.
Just to help viewers, that was Matthew chapter 13, verse 30.
Yeah, it's Matthew 13:30. So, what we're trying to understand is there's this fullness that happens of the Gentiles. The Gentiles do have what their fullness is they rule the whole earth, and then they teach many false teachings because their power really isn't in check, because the final image, which is the eighth head, hasn't been here to judge them. So they continue in false teachings, and they blind and they lead the sheep astray, or the term wolves in sheep's clothing. They act as sheep. They act as the shepherds and the guiders of Israel, but they are wolves in sheep clothing, or false shepherds, or false teachers. Now, it is a mystery. People do not. It's not like they know this and they teach this. People think that they're good. Everything's good where they're at. They're in church. They're paying their tithes. They maybe got a blessings of a new car, or a new house, or whatever. They are in total blindness. They think everything's fine because there's no judgment around them. They're getting pats on the back, like, good sermon, preacher. Way to go. you entertained me, basically. You stood up there and you made me feel whatever. I came from a system like that when I first came into the knowledge of what, well, I wasn't in the full knowledge, but I understood to some degree that there was a God that I was ignoring, because I did come from a life where my mind was absent from the ways of the Father. So I had to be gathered by this man Adam right in front of you, because I did not know the truth. And I met him at a trucking school in Ohio, and one of the first things we did talk about was the rapture. We were both kind of like not really understanding this teaching, because it was more of a less a teaching of, you'd see this image of like a mother holding her kid, and then all of a sudden the kid's gone and she's just got his clothes. These images they would like plant in our head, like the body being gone and then they're just clothes there. And I was like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. It's like, so that was one of the first things Adam and I talked about. But yes, the last days, there is a gathering, and it's not necessarily in the clouds or in heaven. It's righteous people coming together into a kingdom, which is a physical place. Adam, I guess my question and where we would start off is people who are in this blindness were given a warning, and the Father didn't necessarily like absolve them from all their sins, as his Emmanuel is often taught, as what he did on the cross. His whole life was a warning of what is to come. And one of the things that his life did show us is that, are you willing, and John the Baptist's life, are you willing to lay down your life for your brother? And then I don't know if you want me to go into the verse in Genesis where I put enmity.
What's your question exactly?
I'm talking about the enmity, which is hatred between the seed of Israel and the seed of the Gentiles. And then the people that say that they're good in these churches don't call themselves Israel. They call themselves Christians or Jews or Muslims or Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons. So we have this thing where it's kind of like where they think they're good is because they were taught by false sheep or false pastors that they are good, because they don't know their roots. They don't know that Israel is gathered in the last days by the image, which is the eighth head of the Father himself. And so we have to, one, talk about the enmity, and then we have to talk about why Emmanuel is a warning and not the be-all, end-all, because he did give stern warnings himself about false teachers. Now, if you wanted an exact question, I'm having a little bit of trouble, but you know where this needs to probably go next. And I would just, I can read Genesis again, because we have read Genesis before and talked about the enmity between the seeds. You want to go there?
No, but if your question is, because going and talking about the enmity before explaining the sign doesn't exactly help fully. So if your question is about what was the sign all about, then we can go there. Is that what your question is? Right? What is the sign?
Yeah.
So it says that in Isaiah that a sign is given, that a child shall be born, a child of the seed of Adam, not a child of like a Zeus. It's not a child of a god. It is a child of the blood, flesh, and bone of the seed of Adam shall be born. Now everyone thinks, oh, well, he needs birth to be considered Adam. No, because the Father made Adam without Adam. So he's just bringing back to remembrance for everyone that here is Adam again.
Yeah.
So the sign is given to the children of Israel that a child of Adam is born, and that a child of Adam shall come in the last days. So what everyone confuses is they confuse the teachings of a child of Adam coming in the last days that shall be born, but not like the Son. He'll be born, he'll have a mother and father, he'll be made flesh, but it won't be a son, no son is given. So you're not looking for a, what do you call it there? Maculus? I think that's how you word it. You're not looking, you're not looking for a maculus conception, you're not looking for a child. You're looking for, because it says, no one knows the Son but the Father. Well, everyone knew Emmanuel. No, they did. It's just the church changed it. So they knew by the name Emmanuel. And then the Catholics changed it, and the Pharisees changed it to a different. Because we know he doesn't have two names. And this is the confusing part of the church, is they try to say, well, Emmanuel is just another name for Jesus. No, he has one name alone. So, and the point that he's trying to make is, when he taught, remember, he said, before he left, he said, I must go so the Comforter comes.
Yeah.
And another verse in John, I believe, it says, I will ask the Father to send another Comforter.
Yes.
So another Comforter, meaning the Comforter itself, that word means Savior. It's not talking about someone just to comfort you in a hard situation, because even then, that means a type of Savior.
Mm-hmm.
But he's talking about he'll send a Comforter, a Savior, to guide his people. So we have this really bad situation of how we're taught that people are teaching these verses and putting it into one verse, the seventh head, Emmanuel. When it says, especially Revelation 8 comes from the seventh and is of the seventh. So we see, and then Emmanuel said, I will destroy this temple, I will destroy this body. So if he's saying, I will destroy this body, rebuild it in 3 days, guess what? When he rose from the cave, his body wasn't rebuilt because he still had the scars on his hand. So it wasn't rebuilt. He's talking about rebuilding a body from ground up. That means in the womb, and then it coming out is rebuilt. It's not like it was before. So if Emmanuel is right there saying, I will destroy this temple and rebuild it in 3 days, and the church is like, you're talking about the building. It took longer than 3 days to build it. So right there, he's talking about, I will rebuild, I will destroy this body. Not, I will destroy this body and rise this body up. No, he said, I will destroy this body and rebuild the body in 3 days. The body, not this body or my body, the body.
Yeah.
So that means he'll rebuild a whole new flesh, blood, and bone, which is a temple. We're all temples. So he'll rebuild a new body. So we're talking about sometime in the future. And
Yeah, and
how do we know this?
he was resurrected in 3 days. But then again, he was just here for a quick, short time, and then he went back up. So it wasn't talking about that body. He was a sign of the body to come in 3 days that will not be destroyed, right?
Yes. So, well, he's talking about remaking a new body.
Yeah.
Again, the body that was destroyed had wounds on it.
Yeah.
So he's talking about building a new body that no longer has those wounds, because everyone's looking for that body that had the wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And he's telling you, stop doing this. It tells you, Leviticus, do not make any graven image.
Yeah.
And yet, you guys make pictures and statues out of this. So this is where you're falling. So he's talking about, I will make a new body. You won't recognize it. The only way you'll recognize that I dwell in this body is by how he talks. So if you have false teachers, then he's not going to talk like them. He's going to be talking differently, just as the sign was given, how he talked differently than the Pharisees.
Yeah, and then in Ephesians 1:10, he says, I will gather all things in Israel, both in heaven, which is Israel, and those of earth, Gentiles, into myself. Again, he all things come from him, and if he's going to gather all things to him, we did not see that.
So what?
Israel was scattered, not gathered.
So when he's referring to all things in heaven, is he's referring to the first fruits. So he's referring right there, which is talking about Revelation, heaven shall give up his dead.
Yeah.
Hell shall give up his dead. The sea shall give up his dead. So what it's talking about is the people that have died, who are the first fruits of Israel and are held for the time for them to come back as a baby and to fight in this great war. Those that have died, that are put into a temporary place called hell, they're going to come back in flesh, and they're going to be judged. And then Steve giving up his dead, we're not talking about the ocean, we're talking about people who have died in the nations, which is basically a repeat to those who have died in hell, and stuff like that. So it's basically a run-on census, because you're not having people that died in 3 locations. This is what the Catholics try to say, oh, well, there's purgatory. There is no purgatory. There never was. What heaven is the spiritual place of heaven. It's a holy ground. We know this because it says he comes back with 10,000 times 10,000 of his people.
Yes.
Emmanuel did not do this. So we're talking about another vessel that's going to come back with people. What I mean by Emmanuel didn't do this, I'm saying that that vessel, that flesh and blood did not do this. So he's going to come back in another flesh and blood that you don't recognize. His people will be among you that you're not going to recognize, because they're going to be called by a different name too. You're going to see Isaac and, Seth and Abel. You're not going to see these people with the exact same names. They're going to have a different name. They're not going to look like whatever they looked like before. So people have to understand this. No sign is given. People don't understand how important it is. Now, the whole enmity thing is what makes a person Israel. It's not by blood, it's by keeping the laws and commandments. Didn't Emmanuel say, if you love me, keep my ways?
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, oh, So he made a whole new thing. We need to keep, no. He's saying, I was from the beginning. I'm the same as yesterday as today. So clearly, we're not talking about, oh, he's the same as a day and then today. He's saying he was the same from the beginning as is today. So that means all the commandments and laws that he spoke during the time of Adam, to that point in time, you're to keep if you love him. That's what makes you Israel.
Yes.
Because if you read the definition of the blessings of Abraham's grandson Israel, you see that the meaning of this name is tied to the definition of all these blessings that are explained about this person. And all this blessing that's explained about this person has to do with following the narrow road, has to do with following the path of Israel, the path of humanity, the path of Adam. Because what does Paul say? By the law, I knew sin. So Adam, by the commandment, he knew what? Sin. And then what does Paul say? Through sin, I knew the law. Adam, through sin, he knew the commandments. He knew the laws. He knew how important they were. So Paul is actually is doing a throwback to the cornerstone, Adam, because that's where all that exactly was explained. It didn't start with Paul. Oh, Paul just happened to be the start of through the law I knew sin. What was the first law given throughout time? It was given to Adam.
Yeah.
So how was Paul trying to say, oh, well, it starts with me? He's not saying that. He's reminding you of Adam, that the first time the law was given, Adam knew sin. And through Adam knowing sin, he knew the law. And this now falls on every single person. So those that don't love the law through sin is called a Gentile, because they will hate the laws and keep sin and love it. This is what makes you Gentile. And what makes you Israel is by loving the laws of God. So it's not by blood, because we all have the blood of Adam. But by loving the laws and commandments, you're called something that divides you from all the other seeds of Adam. It says in the Old Testament, I have given you a name to divide from all the other houses, from all the other families. So that name Israel, which divided this particular seed of Adam from the other seeds of Adam, which is a throwback to the New Testament where Emmanuel is talking about planting the seeds. Some seeds go in the rock, some seeds go in the desert, and these seeds that go into this area die, but the one seed that goes into this area lives. Seeds.
Yeah.
We're not talking about plant seeds, we're talking about seeds of Adam.
Yeah, righteous seeds.
So how are you thinking this parable has anything to do with seeds of plants or fruits? He's always been talking about the people in all his parables. Why does it switch to thinking you're to take at face value? How? He says a tree that bears fruit is what? The tree that does not bear fruit is what? Just a tree? Give me a break, people. Open up your eyes and understand. He's always been talking about people. It's never changed. He's always been talking about the lineage of Adam, that there is light and there is dark, because Adam is made of this, and you're made in the likeness of Adam.
Yeah.
So you are made in light and dark. So the seeds that are light are Israel, the seeds that are dark are Gentiles. But you're all one, and through one is Adam. Now they changed that to Christ. Didn't Emmanuel tell you, you have lived and taught without the cornerstone?
Yeah.
He's not telling people, oh, you forgot about me. No. To forget about the cornerstone means the cornerstone was taught to you. So that means you had a personal understanding to this cornerstone throughout throughout time. That means that cornerstone was alive in flesh.
Yeah, I was in
So
the world.
it's not
The
about the
world knew
beginning
me
of
not.
something.
I was in the world, and the world knew me not. So again, we're dealing with that now because people say, "Well, the Holy Spirit is in me." No, he's talking about knowing Him on a personal basis. He walked among us, and we knew Him not. So we're dealing with this. Where then, since they don't know Him personally, they think the guy that's in front of the church is their pastor, has some kind of connection to Him, which that you're already severed the tie of knowing the Father.
No, well, it goes deeper than that because you have the Jews that idolize the temple. You got the Muslims that idolize the mosque. You got Buddhists and Hinduism that idolize a statue that's made in an image of a person, like the Son of Adam. And you have Christians and Catholics that idolize a cross. So all these people are not recognizing that He dwells in the body. Go ahead, Chris.
So yes, He dwells in the body, and He came as a body in Emmanuel, and they didn't recognize Him, and they killed Him. His body left the earth. His body was not here, and then they became the substitute. They became this thing, and they said, "Well, the Holy Spirit dwells in us." And He says, "You do not know me." We're talking about knowing as a physical person, which He was on the earth when we killed Him. And then He says, "I will come again." And that Comforter, and Him you will follow. Or, I come in my Father's name, and you knew me not. And then I come again, and you shall know me.
Another shall come in His own name.
He comes in His own name, and Him you shall know, or you shall know me. So it's about this relationship. He is in the world, and the world knows Him not. They understand it, don't understand who He is. They are blinded because they have taken Him off of the world. He's off planet. He's in the sky and the stars. I was in the world, and the world knew me not. Well, who was manifested first? Who was in the body first? Adam. And again, we're talking about seeds. We're talking about flesh and bone and children that are carrying this seed. We're not talking. Yes, there is a tie into the stars, but we're not talking about off planet, off from which they teach that. They teach kind of like this heavenly realm. It's taught in these churches.
So what you're trying to say is not angels or aliens, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say is you know Him on a personal level in a physical body. And that was the warning that was the manual. Like, yes, He did die and He left, but it's all about to know me in flesh. And the Pharisees obviously didn't know Him in flesh. They knew Him as a book or a scroll with the laws in it. They didn't know Him as being in flesh. They forgot the cornerstone themselves. They called Him a son of David. So yeah, I see this thing as like a warning that goes throughout the whole Bible, like even when He says the knowledge of good and evil, we're talking about knowing something, right? Knowing Him, knowing good and evil. And then, obviously, maybe a little deeper subject than I could put into words.
So, real quick, what we're trying to explain to the viewers is you have the sign that's given, like the one that's It's also explained in Ezekiel, where a trumpet is blown. So the Father is warning not the whole world, but his people, because he's about to scatter his people onto his enemies. And he is giving you a warning to say, hey, you have something now that when I come, you have some understanding to recognize you. Again, this goes back to the parable of those who had a lamp and oil. They had an understanding to recognize him when he came. So the sign wasn't given to everyone. It was only given to those who tried to keep the laws and commandments. Yes, you can't keep it perfectly, but that's because he broke it. He broke it because he scattered his people onto the Gentiles to make them live as Gentiles.
Yes.
So that when he would come back, he would rebuild his house from among the Gentiles. And those that recognize and follow his ways would then be known as Israel.
Yes.
So this is what the whole resurrection, be born again, is about. It's not about that he'll come and gather his people who are by a particular blood of David or blood of any of that. It's about gathering the people that love his laws and commandments and keep it. You know, the Bible says about grace, well, grace means only to those that are not going to be destroyed by his judgment in the end. So grace means mercy. It's just another word for mercy. So he's given mercy unto his people that he will not destroy them when he gathers tares up to burn them up, as is mentioned in Matthew 13:30. It does not talk about people being taken up into the clouds. He says he will gather the wheat and the tares, and he will gather up the tares, put them in the fire, which is a judgment to be killed and cut off physically. And how do we know how that will play out? We go to Paul's teachings, which is saying, do you not know you're to judge the world? Hello? You're to judge the world beside the king when he's here in flesh.
Yeah.
So right there, you're to know that you're to also take part in destroying the tares, the Gentiles, who what? Hate the laws and commandments, who call the king the anti, who refuse to bow down to him because they love their false teachers, they love the lies that were taught, or they love the lies of their evolution or the understanding of the world. They say, you don't mention what we know.
Yeah.
Because that goes back to the parable of those that had a lamp and no oil.
Emmanuel, on the Last Supper, he broke the bread, which is his body. Now we understand his body is his people, Israel. So the breaking of the bread, was that a symbol of him scattering his people?
No, the breaking of the bread and the drinking of the wine is to remind people, again, I'll explain it. Here is my bread. Eat it. How does it say? Take this bread and eat it. This is of my body. Explaining, you are of me. Be like me.
Okay.
Take this wine. This is of my blood. And drink it so that you are of my spirit. So the people take that and they say, oh, well, that's a whole different thing. Now there's a whole new act. There's a whole new beginning right here with this guy. That's not at all what he was teaching you, because remember, the disciples at this time have forgotten about it.
Yeah.
So he is reminding the disciples, take this bread, because I am the word. Bread always symbolized the word. Take my word and eat it, which is of my body, my flesh. So again, going back to John, the word took on flesh.
Yes.
So if the Word took on flesh, we're not talking about Emmanuel, we're talking about Adam. Because that was the first time the Word took on flesh. Because if that's not the truth, then how is it that everything that the Spirit form of Adam, foretold of what would happen to his own children? Because if we say the children of God, we're talking about the children of Adam. So we know that Adam is the physical extension of the spirit version of himself, which we call God. So therefore,
Adam was born out of a woman's flesh, womb, passed through flesh to be born. Just wasn't, yes, there was a Father's spirit came into her, but yeah, he was born of flesh as a baby, attached, to her with the umbilical cord. And yes, it was a sign. That again too was a sign pointing to who he was. He's Adam, and he comes again, and that is the resurrection, Adam being reborn, right? I'm sorry if I messed that up.
The resurrection is about the seed of light being reborn.
Okay.
So that's about Israel coming back, because we're all, okay, I don't want people to be confused here. We're all children of that. So how can you be children of one person if you don't come from his loins?
Yeah.
So with Emmanuel, he came from the loins of Mary, who was a daughter of Adam.
Okay.
So therefore, it's showing that, yes, you can say Emmanuel is Adam, but the resurrection is about his seed, which was called Israel.
Okay.
So therefore, this goes back to who gave that name. It was the spirit of Adam that talked to his son, Abraham's grandson, and blessed him with the name Israel, and gave a direct commandment. So the father is talking to his son and saying, thy name, your name, O child of Adam, is no longer Jacob, but is Israel. They can't see you. Oh. So therefore, if we know that he says, come on, folks, it's not saying I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, because then that goes against New Testament, where they teach he's the God of all flesh. So that means that it's not the word God, it's Father. He's the father of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. So they try to teach, this God chooses who he deems as his father. That mindset goes against Scripture.
Yeah.
It goes against through all, in all, are we all Adam, children of Adam. So what it's saying is the spirit of Adam has been constantly working everything in this world. And people forget that name, and they say Yahweh, they say Jehovah. They have so many different names now, except for the name Adam.
Yeah.
So it goes back to the New Testament. Go baptize everyone in the name of the Father, Adam, Son, Emmanuel, and Spirit, Israel. So the resurrection, therefore, is about the Word coming back to remembrance. And the only way the Word can come back to remembrance is by us recognizing the Father, Adam, knowing the Son, Emmanuel, not that Emmanuel is just the son of Adam. If that's the case, why did he take part in Mary's womb?
Yeah.
So therefore, it's a reminder that he is the Father. Emmanuel is the Father. Adam is the Father, and the Spirit is the Father. So the Spirit goes by these three names: Adam, Emmanuel, Israel.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's the resurrection of those that recognize him. Roll back to New Testament. Lord, Lord, have I not done all these wonderful works? And yet he says, I never knew you.
Yeah.
Because you never knew the past. Go and throw back to a Hosea. My people destroyed for lack of knowledge. What is knowledge? History. So if you don't recognize Adam, how are you going to recognize the Spirit?
Yeah. And then, too, they tell you that the blood covers all, past, present, and future. But, I mean, that makes no sense either. I mean, he was there in front of the Pharisees, and they were like, how you cast out these devils from, Beelzebub. Like a devil, you use a devil's spirit to cast out devils. They didn't recognize.
So then and then with Emmanuel, real quick, when Emmanuel, completing what you're saying, when Emmanuel says, how can a devil cast out a devil? It means, how can a sinful person cast out sin? You can't. So what he's saying is, is basically a sinful person only keeps it going. He was not sinning, he was reviewing. Emmanuel was trying to bring something back to remembrance. But he did it in a hidden way. How he talked to parables, he wasn't trying to reveal exactly what days were. This was for when he comes the final time. It says he will reveal all things.
Yeah, and
so
then
when it says he shall reveal all things, we're looking for that comfort.
Yeah, but it's not a person that, like they teach it, will forgive what Cain did to Abel, or forgive what the Pharisees said to Emmanuel. Well, their thinking is flawed. I mean, the laws and commandments, yes, you cannot probably do them perfectly, but you just can't also just throw it out over your shoulder at the same time. Like, oh, I can't, do it perfect. I know that I sin. I admit that I sin, but then also say, well, the blood covers everything. Whoop, throw that away. They like talking out of both sides of their mouth. Like,
so
you teach.
Explaining what you're saying is the blood of Adam covers the sins of his seed.
Yeah.
So Emmanuel, what blood? Did Emmanuel have his own blood? No, he came out of Mary. He took on Mary's blood. Mary's blood, where did that come from? Go all the way back to the family tree, it goes to Adam.
Yes.
So we're talking about the blood of Adam covers the sins of his people, because Adam will be the one to destroy sin, because Adam was the one to bring sin in. Thus the Alpha, the beginning of what? Beginning of, because we know that the Spirit has no beginning nor has an end. So what beginning are we talking about? The beginning of sin and the end of sin. This is the work that has a beginning and end, is sin.
Yes.
So Adam was the beginning of sin, the first Adam, and so the last Adam will be the end of sin.
Which Paul eloquently speaks of in 1 Corinthians chapter 15.
As well as Emmanuel, the son of not man. There's a name here, someone's name. The son of Adam, the son of Adam, the son of Adam, the son of Adam, the son of Adam. So we're talking about a seed of Adam that will rise up amongst his brethren.
Yes.
The little horn. amongst the other horns.
Hmm. From the seventh comes the eighth head. And we talked about this before. The eighth head is Adam, and the seven heads before him are Adam, Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Solomon, and Emmanuel. These are heads of Israel, which are kings of Israel. And these are not kings of Gentiles. Gentiles have had many kings, thousands and thousands. Most of the time they kill each other. We're talking about heads of Israel that were the temple of the sanctuary of the living spirit themselves.
You know what? The best way to explain this is for people to read the book of Enoch, chapter 92. So you're 92 or 93, where in each day there was a temple that did a great work that shifted the course of everything. So everything that happened in Abraham's time was works that shifted the world. Adam, obviously the starter of the world, shifted things. Enoch shifted things. Noah clearly shifted things because in his time, flood. Moses shifted the world in his time because everyone heard of all the works that Moses did. Solomon, great wisdom. No one else like him. In his time, shifted the world. Many people came to Solomon.
Yeah.
Emmanuel, again, he only lasted for a short time, not as merely as the other ones before him. Shifted the world again. And this final head is going to come. Not only will it shift the world, but it will do a final work. So
yes.
when it says for Emmanuel, it says it is done. Emmanuel is talking about the laws and commandments are done, and the warning of my people is done. Because after Emmanuel, his people become scattered. So clearly that means there's another work to be done. How can you say Emmanuel did everything on the cross when clearly there's more works and many more prophecies yet to be fulfilled? Come on, folks. It doesn't take a rocket science to understand these scriptures. It's just you're being taught by false teachers who claim to have the spirit of Israel, claim to be sheep with our wolves, and claim to know the cornerstone, but don't know Adam.
Yeah, prophecy points to something, and it points to something being fulfilled. A promise that is fulfilled. It's like, in Isaiah it says Prince of Peace. There was no peace. Israel got destroyed. They got scattered.
So he says, a
counselor and the government will be on his shoulders. That means he's
exactly what you're saying, but let's set up by the Prince of Peace. Where was that mentioned? I'll actually read the scriptures. So if you say Prince of Peace,
9:6 or something.
No, let's talk about that.
Oh,
if you want to go there, go ahead for the viewing. But in Genesis 32:28, it says, and he said, "Thy name shall be called no more Jacob and Israel, for as a prince." Now we know it doesn't say Prince of Kings or Kings of Princes. So we now can understand, reading Revelation and other scriptures, you take that word prince and you throw it out the window because that's a Gentile term, because they had kings and they called their sons princes. That's not correct. It's kings, their father were kings, and their sons were kings to come in the line of their father king. But they thought, oh, my son is a prince, meaning the definition of a prince is like a king that is yet to come, a king that'll come after my step.
Yeah.
So But in Revelation, we know it's King of Kings. And he says, I will make prince and kings. I mean, not prince, priest and kings. Doesn't say I will make priests and princes. I will make I will make priests and kings. Too many P words. So clearly in Isaiah, it's not Prince of Mercy, it's King of Israel, because 13:28, Israel is a king.
Yeah, and then in that same thing is a yoke around Israel's neck, and then
No, Israel's a yoke around his neck.
as he breaks the yoke, and where is it at?
No, it's Israel's a yoke around his neck.
Oh,
Because Israel is a burden to him. So it's a heavy yoke. And it forces, because a yoke is like the animal's thing, like a horse, and a thing that you steer.
yeah.
So that's what a yoke is. And so for Esau, it was a heavy yoke, a heavy burden, because he couldn't get out of the shadow of his brother because of the blessings given to Israel. And it goes back to Canaan. What was the yoke given to Canaan? He'll be servants in the house of Shem, which we now know as Israel, and the house of Japheth, which is of Gentiles. So Canaan himself is a Gentile, but it's saying that there's going to be a group of people who are going to be servants in the kingdom when Israel rises, because that is the kingdom. Israel is the kingdom. That's why he said the kingdom is at hand. Man said the kingdom is at hand. Heaven is at hand, or kingdom is at hand. And then people were like, what do you mean it's at hand? What do you mean it's now? You might have saying it's now because I am the kingdom.
Yeah.
All those who follow me are part of the kingdom. All those who follow me are come into the kingdom. So the kingdom is Israel. So when Israel was scattered, the kingdom is gone.
Yeah.
So then
they are. That's when the yoke breaks, and they send gifts to one another.
Correct.
So yes, it says that in Isaiah 9, chapter 9,
and Revelation.
Yeah, and so then a child is born, and a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father. That gives you an idea right there. And then it says the Prince of Peace, the King of Mercy. They all say, hey, that's talking about Emmanuel. So they're right here in the Old Testament. And he had no government upon his shoulder. He did not bring peace.
And what did it say? They did not come to bring peace, but a sword.
Yeah. And then the other thing they say is talking about Emmanuel is chapter 53 of Isaiah. Which I didn't plan this out. I mean, I'm going there because I know the word. I know how it builds on itself. And it's called, the chapter's called The Suffering Servant. Sorry, like I said, I didn't really prepare this, but now some of it is about Emmanuel, okay? He was afflicted. He did not open his mouth as they beat him and whipped him. he was an offering for sin. But sorry, I'm getting myself in because I'm not prepared to go here. Okay, this is talking about Emmanuel. My bad. What
are you trying to explain, Frank?
I messed up. What I was trying to say is sometimes where they try to make Emmanuel the be all end all, and everything ended with him. And I'm trying to point out the continuation of these prophecies still have yet to be fulfilled. They haven't exactly all fulfilled. They'd say this, that they were all fulfilled through him, which is wrong.
Well, all people need to read is stuff like Leviticus and every word. They just do a research, Google search, scatter, and gather. Those two key words, and it'll pull up all the verses that have to do with the final day of the last days. And that's where we're in now, because that is Emmanuel, but it's Emmanuel in a different body. It's Emmanuel because he says, if you know me, you know the Father. So basically what he's saying is, if you know me, you know the Comforter. So he's saying it in a different term that I will come again, but in a whole new body. And that I and the Father are one, meaning Adam. Because Adam is the father of us all. So he's saying, I am Adam is me. And the only way to destroy sin, we have to understand, it's the Father. See, this is where the church really butchers the Father, is they split into two personalities. They say, here is God, that's all loving and merciful, and here's the devil, all wrathful and judgmental. You can't split his personality. He is both wrathful and merciful, light and dark. So you have to understand, if that is him, and it says in Isaiah, I create the light, I create the dark, I make peace, which is mercy, and I create evil, which means sin. Because evil is sin. To make you go against him is sin. So what he's saying is, I created sin, only I can remove it.
Yeah.
I will give you mercy, only I can take that away. So it's all about the Father giving you example that's saying, I do all these things that you see before you, and that's where even it says in the New Testament, everything that we see in the physical is not made by the physical, but by the Spirit. So then how dare you say that there's two spirits that are doing great works? There's only one Spirit, because he says there is none beside me. I do all these things. So you false teachers, get it understood. Because judgment's coming upon you, and you won't like it. I promise you that.
Yeah, and then, he says, upon this rock I establish my people. Well, these people have not been gathered yet and established. And then they'll just say, well, that's the church. It's that building on the corner. It's all been done. We got churches, so he established his people.
But what he's saying is, upon this rock, is he's again referring to that temple that's coming. So the Comforter, upon the Comforter, he shall build his people.
It changed it to church. Like they're looking at buildings. They got Jews bowing to a wall. They look at a building and say, everything's done. I don't understand.
So right there is talking about the resurrection. Being born again means to be born again. Because again, Nicodemus says, how can a man enter his mother's womb a second time. So it's not talking about being born again, going into adult and somehow coming back out as a baby. It's saying being born again, which means a type of baptism, being born again with knowledge. So you're being born again because it's talking about the new wine versus the old wine. So you have the old wine pouring out, being born again, baptized, having the new wine in you. So we're clearly talking about now. It's not going into your mother's womb and coming back out as a baby, folks. It doesn't take a rocket science to understand this stuff. So you must be born again as Israel. Because you can't go and do the old ways of Israel. You must be born again to accept the new way. That's why he keeps warning you of people trying to go back to the old ways of the covenant. It's broken. There's a new covenant coming. If you don't accept that and understand that, and you fight to uphold the old, then you will be destroyed because you won't recognize the new.
Yeah, this is the Pharisees. They recognized what was before them. And he called them, they said they were filled with dead man's bones. They had the old dead wine in them. Not the living waters.
Is there anything you want to add, Arthur?
The teachings well, I've been learning to say none of this was right.
I can't hear.
The priests didn't say nothing whatsoever about what y'all teaching right now. They didn't say anything about this whatsoever.
But what did it?
Well, they say by you coming to church and listening, going to their Bible studies, and but how the way they preach it, they don't preach it how the way y'all talking about it.
So let me explain.
They don't do that at all.
So let me explain that. So if you're listening to someone and saying, "Come to my church, come to me, I will guide you and teach you," and all you have to do is keep coming back here and coming back here, how are you fulfilling going out to highway and hedges and out to all nations?
Okay.
You're going back to the same location. How are you going to other people like the disciples are doing?
Can't do that. I can't do that. I don't know how to.
Yeah,
But then we're supposed to do. That's how you know that these people are false. Because you're supposed to go out there and be a priest to other people, to your brethren.
yeah, they like I said, they say Peter is the rock, which is wrong right there. And then they build their church. They all come from the Roman Catholic Church anyway. That they all come from Peter. They have no understanding of what he said, "I built my rock upon." He's talking about Israel because Peter recognized him as being Adam,
Son of Adam.
son of Adam. So they like I said, they make that building as the fulfillment of his people, Israel. Like, well, you can go to a building and we're all gathered there, saying a false name and teaching false things, but
What does Scripture say? You're to be gathered on to the one who comes and go wherever he goes.
yeah,
The sheep follow him wherever he goes, it says. So it's about going back to the promised land. It's also about subduing what? Subduing the darkness, subduing the nation, subduing your enemy. Subdue. Have dominion and subdue the darkness.
yeah.
But anything else you want to add for?
And another one is um the well um my my uncle, um he was a priest, and you can hear me clearly on this? Can you
I
hear
can,
me?
yeah, I hear you.
Okay, yeah, my uncle was a priest, and he 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 was trying to teach me um um how to weigh. He said how to weigh God or the Lord is. He don't say in Israel name at all whatsoever. But for some reason, when he was trying to teach me, it's not. I wasn't listening, and then it's not like I ran away from him. It just I did not want the teaching from him no more. And I still talk to him, but I don't talk about you know
Yeah.
God anymore.
So what
All
you're
that.
saying is your uncle, you trust your uncle.
Yeah, yeah,
And like my brother Arthur has mentioned, he was being taught by someone that never used the word Israel. Well, clearly, this word is all throughout the Bible. And it says the foundation of the Lord makes known Israel from all rebellion by not teaching the meaning of Israel. Because the blessings and the promises are tied to Israel. And even they ask Emmanuel in the New Testament, are you going to, rebuild the kingdom of Israel? And what is his response says? He didn't say no. He said it's not for you to know when this would happen. So that
Yeah.
means it's going to happen. But you won't know when because you're supposed to be focused on preaching the truth. Go out to highway hedges, bring all people onto the marriage of what? The marriage of Israel.
Yeah.
Because by that name are you saved. Now people on this video will hear it and be like, no, by the name of Jesus are you saved.
yeah.
Really? How does that make sense when he says a new comforter shall come in his own name? That right there tells you it's no longer by the comforter that was crucified. It's by a new and everlasting name, and that name that was crucified is used for idolatry. Doesn't that mean it's been polluted?
Yeah.
So he's talking about a name that is not polluted because you won't be able to twist this name for anything else. You have to accept him for who he is because you're going to have to bow down on one knee. He
Yeah.
shall reign in flesh among you. So right there, we're talking about a king who's going to come to save his people who recognize him through his word. How is this all focused on the one that received a fatal wound, and yet here, and it says everyone marveled. Marvel. This is not a good thing because you should not marvel at all if you're Israel.
Yeah.
You should have already known in scripture what was to happen. You should not be marveling. Marveling is like, oh wow, that's something new. No, because what it said, I will hide nothing from the Abraham's house. I will hide nothing from my people. They shall know all things. Isn't that what's told back to Genesis, Adam? You shall know all things of good and evil. Hello?
Yeah.
So right there, everything that was told to Adam that was going to happen wasn't just to Adam, it was to all of his seed that was to happen. All of Adam's seed. So first it had to start somewhere. That was Adam. Then it goes through his seed and ends with him. The Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and end. Because we know mercy doesn't have an end. Salvation never has an end. Redemption never has an end. It's been going on throughout this whole process. So what does have an end? sin has an end. Thus sin has a beginning.
Yes.
This is what becomes destroyed. Because we do scripture that says everlasting, which is the house of Israel, the kingdom of Israel, people, everlasting.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So then that makes sense to why this name Israel is so important. It says anyone who blasphemes the name of the Spirit, that sin will not be forgiven. Well, what was the name given to Abraham's grandson? That was by the Spirit. Israel. So if you blaspheme the name of the Holy Spirit, which is Israel, your sin will never be forgiven, because that means you deny the history of Israel. You deny the works of Israel. You deny who Israel is.
Yeah.
And therefore, you accept sin and false teaching. Because you're taught that he did away with Israel. Now comes the Gentiles who are now called Christian Catholic, and they're brought into the whole salvation. Oh, there's an anti-Christ coming that's going to deceive the Jews. He is anti to your teachings. He is anti to your ways. My ways are not yours.
Yeah.
He is anti to the nations. Because you're anti to his works that are from the beginning.
Yeah.
So if you're not teaching the Old Testament and showing that the Old and New are the same, then you're the anti, you're the wolf that's in sheep's clothing. Alright.
Yeah, I just want to say real quick, this word came to me, Israel, and it's a new word to a lot of people, but it is a pure word. It has not been tainted as Christian has. I mean, you have these pastors and preachers who, if you're in a church, you probably are seeing this with your own eyes, how they say one thing and they act another way. You know, they are the wolves that we are talking about. And you could hear Israel and it's different, and you can hate that it's not what you're used to. But that's because it has been protected. So not tainted.
No. Let's understand this for this. The name Israel is the name of people. So not the name of a nation. It's the name of people. Now the people that are trying to claim that name are called Jews. They don't call themselves Israel. They call themselves Jews. So they're not claiming to be Israel and still doing sin. They're claiming to be something totally different than Israel. So when you hear Israel, do not think of those Gentiles that are in the Middle East right now who are allowing sin of gay, lesbian, transgender, and who feed off of money out of tourism and all these things, because that's not Israel. Israel, look at Joshua, who was Israel. Look at David, who was Israel. Look at how they treated that stuff. They did not put up with it. They cut it off and rooted it out. And they taught the nations to be light if they want to partake in salvation. They welcomed Gentiles, but the Gentiles would then be born again from being a Gentile to becoming Israel and would be part of it.
Yeah.
This was the only way for any Gentile to be saved throughout time. You had to cut off the sinful ways and follow only the narrow road, the ways of Israel. Narrow, not wide, narrow, which was hard. So we have to, again, understand that they have the name Israel as a nation, but they don't claim to be this at all.
Yeah.
And therefore, Israel is still scattered. Israel has not been gathered yet. It's being gathered now, but
Yeah.
it's not gathered after World War II. That is not Israel. Because if that was Israel after World War II, then you would have already had Gog and Magog. None of this should still be around because Israel would have made war with the nations, not them working with their enemies and being subdued by their enemies. They would tell all nations, if you want to partake in salvation, you have to be like us. And they would lead by example, and they're not at all.
Yeah. And they weren't gathered by the Father, they were gathered by men in their governments. And it's not from the Father at all.
It's not from one individual person.
Yeah. It's just, United Nations and men making treaties. That's all that was.
So, on that note,
All right, this has been a very cool teaching. Again, we're not angry. You see that the Israel is a blessing, and I love that name. I do. And if you want to be Israel, you're going to love that name. And it won't be because of what's over there in the Middle East right now. You love the name because you understand the meaning of it and the history of it. And that's why I love it. That's why these people in front of you all love it. And I hope to have more people love this name.
now, real quick, I just want to add one thing real quick is,
Okay.
again, in that land where LBGTs, gays, lesbians, now it's not just them, but it's straight people too. We're all taught marriage for some simple reason is by walking down a church or being given this authority by someone of court. Where was marriage? Marriage is the act of sex. It is sex because it's unity. It's unity between male and female, not between male and male or female and female. So any church that tries to say marriage is by any pastor or any government or official authority, I will tell you right now as a warning, leave right away from those people because those are false teachers and they will lead you to judgment, destruction. Because marriage has always been the act of sex because it's talking about becoming one flesh, just as Israel becomes one in the spirit. We become one. This is the marriage. We who are physical become one with that which is spirit. Thus the spirit dwells in the holy temples of flesh. So again, the marriage, there's two marriages. There's the one with the flesh and the spirit, and then there's the flesh and flesh. So is the act of sex. You have to understand this. And this should show you what time period we're in because many people are trying to tell you what marriage is. Oh, I can give this authority. This authority was given to Adam. And has been given to all the seeds of Adam. That when a son of Adam goes to a daughter of Adam and they have sex, because that's the only way you can become one flesh is by a guy going into the woman. And you become whole, one, as Eve was in Adam because she was Adam's own. So when the spirit removed Adam's part of his body and made another skeleton from Adam's skeleton, from Adam's bone, And then Adam and Eve had sex and created Cain, Abel, and their two daughters. This is the act of marriage.
Yeah.
So you have to understand what time period we are in, horrible time period. So it's about time that Israel rises. So you're expecting to hear some teaching that's going against a perverse teaching that's been taught for a long time.
Yeah.
So I can't iterate how important understanding that marriage is the act of sex. Thus, a male on male and female on female is complete abomination. And straight people need to understand that if a guy is sleeping around with many women and he doesn't take responsibility of those women, then he is doing whoredom, because he is teaching these women to be whores and prostitutes by sleeping around with many men. So we have to understand, again, when a male and female become one through the act of sex, they are responsible for each other.
Yeah, and I heard this teaching from my brother Adam many years ago now, probably about 8 years ago. It's what changed. It did change me, because the way they teach it, if they actually did teach it right, you would not be going out with multiple dates and women and having sex, giving your buddies high fives and saying, "Oh, we're awesome." Great.
Kids in school would not be doing sex and how they're taught. Schools would not be teaching marriage as a lustful act.
Yeah.
Schools would be teaching that this is marriage, and children would not be throwing around sex like it was a piece of candy in school. And you would have no existence of a boyfriend-girlfriend, because that is husband and wife.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I love you guys. That one is a line that in the sand you cannot cross. Emmanuel was drawing something in the sand when that woman came in with adultery, because she was sleeping with other men. It is a line. It breaks a sacred oath of the union of man and woman. It's very important. And I love you guys, and that's definitely something you should be teaching other people. Even if you don't totally have the whole grasp of what Israel is, you should teach them that. I love you guys. Bye.